it took me a while, sort of from where I came from, to feel like, oh, can I actually, have some financial success? Can I have like a reasonable life where I'm content and I'm not out of my mind all the time, and like all that sort of stuff. And I had to begin to believe that long before it really started to happen.
Hello and welcome to my podcast, Show Up. My name is Daryl Dittmer. As someone who built financial freedom from scratch, I understand what's possible, as there was a time when I thought I had only a life of mediocrity ahead of me. Drinking, drugs, and zero confidence plagued me. The one thing that changed my life is when I decided to do things differently and give success a chance. And I don't just mean financial success, I mean life success. I started to show up to my life and my career, and one step after another provided me the life I never thought possible. At any age, life begins to change when you start to show up. Welcome to my podcast.
Today I'm joined by Jeff Wright. Jeff is the CEO and president of Agent Sales Group, growing his business from a one-man operation from home to a network of 20,000 plus agents with life insurance sales of over 25 million of new annual premium every year. Jeff is also the creator of Flinch No More, a neurologically based survival system specifically designed for women living with active addiction. Its purpose is to help women reclaim their power and reclaim themselves one reset at a time. Jeff, thanks for joining me, man. Good to see you.
Thank you, Daryl. And man, that's quite an introduction. I really appreciate that. And it's great to have the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, obviously you are and have done a ton of show up things in your life, which is exactly what this whole thing's about. So excited to chat with you. And for the listeners, you guys know that we start off this with one question and then just sort of take it from there. But Jeff, if you wouldn't mind telling me about an event or a time in your life that caused you to show up for your life in a different way.
That's actually very easy, Daryl. I was 15 years old, and I wrote about this in my book, Blame the Fame. I grew up in very rural Georgia in a spot where 99% of the people were born there, they raised there, and they died there. They either cut logs or pulp wood or worked in the cotton mill. That was it. And my father had a grocery store, and we served a lot of these people. And that back then, of course, those were the days of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. I don't even know if that's still around anymore. And Walter Cronkite, that was our whole worldview of what we had. And so when I was a kid in high school, one of my classes had a trip to Europe. And I begged my old man to let me go. It was a 14-day trip, cost $800. Down here you can barely have a good dinner for two for $800 now. But $800 for this whole thing. And I get on the plane, and of course, before I go, all these people who had they probably the only time they ever left Georgia was to go over to Alabama and buy fireworks, right? They never been anywhere. But I'm hearing all these things about, don't go here, don't go there. And once I got over there and I just looked, it just opened up a whole new world to me. It totally changed my worldview on everything. And I had such a great time. It made me determine right then and there, this is how I want to live. This is how I want to be. This is the life that I want. And hanging around in Mountville, Georgia ain't going to get me there. And so everything at that point was just fighting towards that lifestyle. And by the time I was 22, 23, I had actually hit it. But it was all focused on getting there. And then a lot of that actually, after I got there, it became a lot of fighting of not going back, because at the time you'll get, when you're young, you're stupid, right? We're both probably about the same age. I'm 61. And so you get 60. A lot of, pardon?
I'm 60.
You're 60.
Yeah.
So when you're in your 20s, you're getting a lot of stupid advice from a lot of people, and the other problem is you wanna be like everybody else. You want to do all the cool shit. You want to have all the cool shit. Back then, I think you'll remember back then the cool thing to have was a Volvo that looked like a shoebox. You remember those?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. And so where I kind of had my reawakening was I was listening to the opinions of other people and found myself doing things to appease other people, but I was doing it at a cost of my belief and doing it at a cost of my family, my business, my home, everything. And when I graduated from high school, Daryl, the day that I graduated from high school, my father, who was a very abusive alcoholic. He was an immigrant from Scotland. He was a rough, tough guy. Was a bail bondsman, had pool halls, pawn shops, all that. That was the environment that I was raised in. The day that I graduated high school, that morning, I'm in my bedroom getting dressed. He walks in there with a Tom McCann shoebox, which I still have, and it was packed with $30,000 in cash, in $100 bills. And in 1983, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he says, "You're graduating from high school today." I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is where my responsibilities for you stop, right here. There's $30,000 in it. You can take it to go to college. You can go to Amsterdam and blow it all on hash and whores if you want. You can do whatever you want with it. But until the day I die, this is all you're ever going to get from me. And you have exactly 2 days to move the fuck out of my house." That was the last night that I ever slept under his roof up until 2 years ago when my mom had knee surgery and I went to go stay with her for a few weeks. So I went a 40-year span, more than a 40-year span, of not even sleeping under his own roof. And when I had gotten all this advice from bad advice from people, I really had gotten in the perfect storm of trouble. There were a lot of circumstances that happened that were beyond my control. And I was literally inches away from losing everything that I had. And as much as I hated to, I went to my dad, who could have easily gotten me out of it. I went to him. I explained everything to him. It was the second best conversation I ever had with him. The best conversation was the day before he died. But he's so understanding. He's so empathetic about everything. And he says, "Wow, that's really too bad. I can see where you're coming from. I can see where this happened. I can see where that happened." He says, "I'm going to help you." I said, "Oh my God, thank you." He said, "You know how I'm going to help you?" I said, "How?" He says, "I'm not going to do a goddamn thing. You remember that fucking shoebox I gave you when you graduated from high school? Did you think I was kidding? You were big enough to get in it. You're big enough to get out of it." And boy, was he right. So that was a huge dose of medicine. So what that forced me to do was insanely focus on everything that I started doing from that point. And I got out of the mess. I got out of the mess better than I started, a hell of a lot smarter than I started, and a hell of a lot more focused. And that the loss of focus, distractions, chasing shiny objects, that will kill any entrepreneur journey. It'll kill any fitness journey, any diet, any relationship, anything. Is taking your eye off the prize. And boy, don't we have enough distractions today.
Oh man. Yeah, we do. And thanks for sharing that story, Jeff. That's really powerful. And you know, I never called it anything other than, number one, I had to get my head out of my ass, which was terribly important. But I didn't know what showing up was. And when it came to, you know, deciding that I was going to do something with my life, and then being forced to, because, you know, very similar to you, nobody was gonna help me. Nobody was gonna make it different for me. and nobody was going to make it easier for me. And so it was, it was really either make it or you're going to probably be living without a roof on your head, like that sort of thing. So it's interesting, and I love this. I love asking this question, and normally it's a little bit later, but it seems apropos now based on your story. So, how has your definition of success changed over the years?
That's actually really easy. Somebody asked me that recently. Where my definition of success used to be when you can do whatever you want to do for as long as you want to do it without asking anyone's permission.
Mm.
I have added to that. Now, to me, it's doing anything that you want to do for as long as you want to do it without asking anyone's permission and not having to show it off.
Mm.
It's not posting your trips, your vacation trips. It's not posting your new car. It's not like I have 3 Porsches sitting at home. I think I may have posted the tail end of one of them once. I just, I have a really nice house. I don't post it. We go on trips all over the world. I seldom ever post them. I have a personal page, and the only reason that I post on there is because I have an 85-year-old mother who likes to know where I am. And I really do it just for her. If she weren't alive, I wouldn't do it at all. But it's doing things like, I'll give you a great example. 10 years ago, I was living in Buckhead at the time, in Buckhead, Atlanta, it's a ritzy place. And the money is just pouring in. Things are going great. I just gone through a divorce and I was just living life. And I decided that I wanted to go buy a Lamborghini. So I actually ordered a Lamborghini, got it in 6 months. I think it was $620,000 for this car. I had it for 4 months, and it was the worst 4 months of car ownership I ever had. And the reason why, I bought it for all the wrong reasons, Daryl. All the wrong reasons. You don't buy them because they ride good or they drive good. They drive great, but they don't ride good at all. None of that. But if you have them, it becomes a big burden. You have the paranoia of parking it. You have the paranoia of valeting it, which I never did. The paranoia of someone hitting it. And then you get all the shit looks from people. Because when you buy something like that, nobody's really happy that you got it. Except maybe another Lamborghini owner.
Right.
The Lamborghini dealer, they're really happy that you got it, but really no one else is. And I didn't even buy that car because I liked it. I bought it because I wanted to show people that I was successful. And I would drive it to agent meetings, and I thought that would inspire people to work harder. Like, if he did that, I can do this too. You know what all they said? You're making too much fucking money. You're not paying us enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. I got rid of it. I got rid of it and went back to driving a Toyota pickup truck. That's the thing. If you buy anything like that, unless you're buying it just for your own personal satisfaction because you enjoy having it or enjoy the thrill of driving it, outside of those, anything else is the wrong reason.
100% agree. Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, and with the whole success thing, my definition used to be, because my dad was a mechanic. I grew up in very blue collar Michigan, and nobody in my family ever graduated from college or anything like that. So I was once I got out of drug and alcohol treatment, I decided I was going to go to college. And honestly, the reason I decided was because I wanted that piece of paper to help me get in the door. I knew it was basically just a dog park. It was just going to socialize me, which I needed. I needed to be socialized at that point in my life, and excuse me, and I was. But so not having, been in a position to grow up, I remember, and this is, I jokingly call it trauma, but it's not. I didn't get a big wheel, and I really wanted one. And so I wanted to have the freedom, which was really an important thing to me. And to me, I needed to have some financial wherewithal to have that freedom. And like you said, do things when I want to do them without asking anybody's permission. And the other reason is because I had watched family members get put in these, terrible places when they were old, and that's where they ended up dying. And that really bothered me. And so I wanted to have a choice of how that whole thing happens, as far as the end for me. So, so it was the freedom thing and it was the money thing. But then I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 25 years ago, maybe 20, but it became waking up in the morning with a smile on my face. That's what success ended up meaning to me. And, a lot of things go into that, right? Because, you can't wake up with a smile on your face if you're, for me, if I'm unhealthy, or if I'm making myself unhealthy, or if I'm not doing things that help me to feel content or peaceful, I have to have solid relationships and all that sort of thing. Waking up in the morning with a smile on my face, but that one's worked and it hasn't changed since that time. I don't know if it'll morph into something else. It might, but I feel like that's the meaning, right? Like if I can truly be contented.
Yeah, contentment means, what more could you want? Yeah, the problem is for so many people is that they always have to have, it seems like today, they have to have something exciting. They have to constantly have that dopamine hit. There are so many people that will start a new business or start something new, or even get married. Well, it can't be exciting all the time. And so to have a successful business, to have a successful marriage, to have a successful fitness journey, any of that, you have got to be really comfortable with embracing the boring and mundane. You have to, because in the boring and mundane, that's where all the magic happens. That's where all the work is. People could see me driving the Porsche and go, "Oh, look at that!" Ba 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 ba. They didn't see what it took for me to get that Porsche. They have no idea what it took. And
Right.
it's kind of like the saying says, when I bought the Lamborghini, the dealer says, "Remember," and he was kind of in retrospect, he was really forewarning me about the haters I was going to get. He said, "There's a reason this car only seats 2 people and a MARTA bus seats 100."
Mm. Right. Exactly.
It's true.
Yeah.
When he said that, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And then after I got rid of it, I remember what the guy said, and I said, God, he's right about that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And that has been something that's been somewhat difficult for me. And, I like to say, and it's mostly true, I haven't stopped chasing life, but I stopped chasing money at 48. And so, not that I haven't made it, I've done consulting, I've done stuff, whatever, but I'm still chasing life. And I find that people don't like sometimes when people they have known, when we were sort of on a similar level, and then somebody pops up, they really don't like that. And I try to tell people, look, I mean, you're welcome to do, like you said, I have the Porsche. People don't know what it took to get it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is people see you where you are, and oh, it's luck, or it's this, or it's that, but it's not. It's putting in the freaking time and the effort and the pain and the blood and everything else that it requires, right? I mean, that's what it is.
And sometimes the most painful thing for a lot of people is just getting out there. There's not that many people that are just willing to get out there. Uh, my dad told me one time, another good piece of advice he gave me. He said, nothing happens at home. Nothing happens at home. You have to get out if you want to show out.
Wow.
Meaning, if you're looking for a big payday, if you're looking for your dream woman to come into your life, they're not knocking on your damn door. That's not happening. You have to get out and go do it. You have to get out and go get it. And being successful now, Daryl, that is, to me, is easier now than ever.
Yeah.
Than ever. Oh my God. You really only have to do a few things. Number one, and we talked about this when we jumped on, is be on time. If you're on time, you're in the top 5% right there. And then just keep your word. Do the things that you're supposed to do and deliver when you say you're going to deliver. And if you really want to be in the top 1%, over deliver that. That's really all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. Is be on time and over deliver on time. Keep your word. And not just keeping your word to your customers or keeping your word to your family. The most important person to keep your word to is yourself. Now, you and I were both in the insurance game. It's a sales culture. What is it that they tell a salesperson all the time they have to have? Confidence. You got to have confidence. You got to believe in yourself. But a lot of people, they haven't done anything to believe in. You can't order confidence on Amazon. I wish you could. But you actually have to do something to be proud of. And that could be fasting for 2 or 3 days. I do that sometimes. Working up to doing 100 push-ups every day. If you do 10 push-ups a day, you're doing more than 90% of Americans are doing now. Maybe even more than that. So when you're sitting there doing some relatively not even hard things, just uncomfortable things, you can take solace in knowing that not a lot of other people are doing this. And can push-ups make you a millionaire? No, they can't. But can the push-ups give you the confidence and the mindset to do it? You damn right they can.
Absolutely, and having that discipline, I swear, man, you're. I just love what you're saying because I agree so wholeheartedly. You were talking about, the daily boredom grind, whatever. I don't look at it that way because it's like my freaking lifeline. Like I plug into life. I just plug myself into, the breath work and the meditation and the exercise and the eating right and all that shit that's pretty boring. But it's keeping my word to me.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've been in recovery for a long time, and I hate saying that. I've been recovered for a long freaking time. And, I have the wherewithal to be an obsessive, compulsive nut job. I do. That's just what I can be. And so I have to temper myself by plugging into these simple disciplines every single day. And like you said, working up and building that confidence. I mean, nothing has built my confidence, but also my peace of mind more than doing shit. Right?
Yeah.
Like your dad said, get out of the house.
You got to get out of the house and you got to do shit. And like if you're drinking, if you're an alcoholic, I had on my podcast not too long ago, really cool guy. His name's Coach Cliff Brooks, lives up in Washington, D.C. And he was an alcoholic. And what he did was he just traded one addiction for another. He traded alcohol for fitness and became a gym rat. And so, the addiction's the same. It's just happens to be a pretty good addiction that he has. And he and I had this discussion because you talk about being a recovered alcoholic. That is the right attitude. because having the confidence and accomplishing things and doing tough shit, as you're talking about, what that does is it raises your identity. I'm a firm believer is in that you cannot really do what you want. You can only do what your identity allows you to do.
Mm.
And so where Coach Cliff and I had this discussion, I have a friend of mine over in Miami who is an AA sponsor. He's been in it for 12 years. And if you ask him, if he introduces himself to you, he's going to say, "Hi, I'm Billy, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for 12 years." And to me, what that sounds like, he still has the identity of an alcoholic. It sounds like he's been fighting it for 12 years. He's still an alcoholic, and he's still trying to push it back, though he has no inclinations to drink anymore whatsoever. I told him that he should change the language that he uses, saying, "I'm a recovered alcoholic. I used to drink, but that is not who I am anymore." And it's a completely different shift. And it's like getting up in the morning. I tell people there's a play on words that you should use. Like, instead of saying, "I have to go walk the dog," you say, "I get to go walk the dog. I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work. I don't have to take my grandkids to Disney World. Kill me now. I get to take them." I hate that place, but I just send them the money for them to go. I don't go. I'm Disneyed out.
Yeah.
But it's all the mindset of things that replacing the things that you have to do to the things that you get to do, and raising whatever your identity is. What is the identity of someone? If you have a goal somewhere you want to be, it could be an income level, it could be, owning a jet, it could be anything. What is the identity of that person? You have to raise that identity first, because if you don't do that, you'll never punch through that hole, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely true. And it took me a while, sort of from where I came from, to feel like, oh, can I actually, have some financial success? Can I have like a reasonable life where I'm content and I'm not out of my mind all the time, and like all that sort of stuff. And I had to begin to believe that long before it really started to happen. And
100%.
yeah, and it's everything's a stepping stone, right? So I'm just stepping and I'm stepping and I'm showing up to the best of my ability and doing stuff to the best of my ability and not quitting, which I think is absolutely, just the watchword. Just don't quit, keep going. And it worked. And it sounds like Jeff, you're talking about gratitude to a large extent, in terms of,
100%.
right, looking at what I get to do as opposed to what I have to do, right? The misery of, oh Lordy, I have to do this. Like, who gives a shit? You have to go do it. Go freaking do it. Quit whining, right?
Yeah. Well, where I learned that from was I am not a holiday person, Daryl. My family back in Georgia is extremely dysfunctional. Nobody gets along. Me and my brother and my sister, we get along okay, but we don't have the best relationship. And then you throw in spouses and kids and all that stuff. It's a certified shit show. It really is. And so I was flying up there for Christmas, which I hated to do. And I stopped for a minute and I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I get to see my grandkids. I get to see my mother. I get to see this. I get to do that. Fuck all this other stuff that I don't like. These are the highlights of the things that I get to do. And that's when I kind of coined the phrase, how you show up is the way things will end up. If I show up there with a pissy attitude, then I'm going to have a pissy time. If I show up with a grateful attitude, I'm going to have a much better time. Maybe not the best one, but I'm going to have one much better than I did if I showed up there all sour.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's and the way to that is similar to the way to confidence, right? I mean, it's practice and it's doing stuff and it's keeping, for me, it's keeping my word to myself about how I am conducting my affairs every single freaking day, and I think that's absolutely crucial. So I want to talk a little bit, Jeff, if we could, about Flinch No More, because that is, one of the things I read in your bio information, which I loved, is that your greatest pleasure comes from helping others succeed, and that's just a beautiful thing. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, is just continue to give back as much as I possibly can. And can we talk a little bit about Flinch No More?
It happened about a year ago. Now, my father was an alcoholic, not a nice guy. He was a smart guy. He gave me a lot of nice little tidbits and gave me a nice going away present when I graduated high school. But he was hell. He really was. He was very abusive to all of us. He was abusive to my mom. I can't tell you how many fights I saw in the house. Just terrible things. And so what I saw was all the "you're no good, you'll never amount to shit, no one ever is going to love you," all that stuff. Okay. And it took me a long time to push through that and fight that, because it took me, I had to realize that all this was coming out of the mouth of a guy who couldn't control what he was putting in his mouth, and he pissed in the bed half the time. So I'm like, well, why the fuck am I listening to that? What the hell does he know? And so fast forward up until a year ago, I have a young lady from California who works for me. She calls me and she's crying. And I thought she'd committed fraud or something. I had no idea. She was just hysterical. And to make a long story short, she'd been engaged to this guy for 3 years, been living together for a while. No one knew that he drank a bottle of vodka every day, had put her in the hospital half a dozen times. She had 2 dogs. He killed both of those.
Oh.
She had become an expert in patching drywall because he was just trashing the house, knocking holes in the wall, and wondering if she should still marry this guy.
Mm.
And I'm like, what the fuck? You get away from this motherfucker as quick as you can. And I tell her my life story, what had happened to me. And she says, I said, why are we even discussing this? And this is what I learned about why so many people, particularly women, and I focus most of my content on women, quite frankly, because most guys are not very willing online to raise their hand and say they're going through anything. It's just not the manly thing to do. That's why I don't do it. Women will 100 times faster raise their hand and openly talk about it. But it was crazy. I did a video about it, but let me back up. I lost my train of thought. So the reason why they stay in these relationships, I would have always thought, was because of the money. They couldn't afford to. They didn't have the funds to do it. That is not as true as you would think, as I have delved into this, talking to so many people. The biggest reason why that they don't go anywhere, and also the reason why she was hesitating on not marrying this guy, she was afraid of what other people were going to think. Plain and simple. She said, well, we're going to get married in Mexico, and my father's already spent all this money. And I'm like, yeah, fuck the money. Who cares? I said, if you were my daughter, I wouldn't care at all. I said, if your father loves you that much, he's not going to give a shit. I said, yeah, I couldn't tell him this. I said, but I'm sitting there thinking, I would apply that money to something else instead of a wedding party. I'd want to get rid of this guy if somebody was doing that to my daughter. And so I did a video about it on Instagram and TikTok. And I think throughout all the platforms, it's been hit like 30, 40 million times, something like that. It's crazy. And I
Wow.
just couldn't believe that many people were suffering through this stuff. So that has been 99% of my content ever since. And the guidebook that I did is just very simple. I only charge $17 for it. I don't do it for a living. I'm just doing it to help. And the reason why I charge money for it, I was giving it away. The reason why I charge money for it is if I charge for it, people will actually read it and use it. If I give it to them, they won't do anything with it. People that pay attention. And so it's just been incredible to me, just one story after another. I got messages today from from a lady in the UK. Her husband had been beating on her, beating on the kids, drinking, doing all this stuff, and last night he killed himself.
Oh,
And now she feels guilty about it, and so then that's a whole other conversation is telling these people how to overcome that guilt that they have for something that they never did in the first place. People always think that if I would have loved harder, I would have tried harder. No, you can't make excuses for the actions and choices of someone else. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about in Flinch No More honestly is a lot about sales relationships that I've been teaching to my agents for 30 years. Because sales and relationships at home, there really isn't a lot of difference. Not a lot at all.
mm,
So that's where all that came from. It's very passionate to me because I remember all the hell that I went through, and I also remember all the stuff that I had to go through myself. And I didn't have any help. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I had to figure this shit out on my own. And and a lot of that was raising my identity of I started my business in my house with just me, but within a couple of months, I was acting as if I did have all the thousands of people working for me. I acted that way, and I acted that way for 2 or 3 years before it actually came to fruition. But the limiting beliefs that you get from people, it could be something that a teacher told a kid in the first grade when they're 6 years old, and whatever that little thing is, it could stick with them for the rest of their life. It's terrible.
yeah, 100% agree. I mean, it's easy to fall into limiting beliefs, unfortunately, because they're easier to believe, and you don't really
Yeah.
have to do shit. You just have to live your life and be limited. And then if you decide not to be limited, like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff to do, but it's a but it's a hell of a life, right? It's a hell of a life. And thank you for sharing that story about Flinch No More, because that's just, I mean, to me, just I've got family members with, those kinds of issues. And there are people in my life. I don't have people in my life that aren't, you know, taking this whole freaking thing seriously. I just
Yeah.
don't. I
You,
can't.
you know, before I started talking about this, I really had no exposure to it because that was a life that I had gotten away from. And I don't watch the news. I don't really keep up with much of anything. I would have thought in this kinder, gentler, politically correct world that we're in that things would have gotten better. Boy, is that wrong. It is way, way, way worse. And the funny thing is, you think it's like, you live up in the mountains in North Georgia. You would think this would be some of these toothless hillbillies up there smoking meth. Okay. Oh, no. Um, I talk to people who, Instagram models in Miami. I have the wives of some very, very, I can't name them, but some very famous musicians and entertainers in California and in Florida who on Instagram and Facebook, they all look like they just have the life, but that life is anything but. It's all window dressing. In fact, I think the more money these people have, a lot of times the worse it is.
Well, I think, money, I've always heard, and I believe it because I've seen it play out this way, that it makes you more of what you are. It makes a person more of
Yeah,
what they already are. And
it's an amplifier.
yeah, I believe that to be absolutely true. And, we can end up doing good things with it, or we can end up not doing good things with it and with ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up here shortly, but there's one thing that I caught on one of your videos today, which I just freaking loved. And it speaks to what you're talking about, just sort of, the world is this blaming place where we separate ourselves from what's real. And
Yeah.
the reality is, if my life's a mess, I got to do something about it. I don't get to blame everything around me. Like when I got sober, when I first started in recovery, it was 1985, and they stuck a big book in my hand. They said, do this shit. And that's what you got to do. Like it wasn't, they didn't wrap me in cotton balls. They didn't tell me everything was going to be wonderful. They told me it's going to suck. And you have to do these difficult things. And so that's what I did, because I was so impressionable at 19, and I was scared to death, and I didn't want to go back, and I wanted to learn how to live, all that kind of stuff. But your video this morning was about the disease of addiction. You and I think very similarly about this, and thank God you do, because it drives me crazy.
People get touchy about that one.
I've been cackling about this for a long time, and everybody's like, no, it's, So anyway, if we could just kick that around for a few minutes, I think that'd be great.
I don't think it's a disease. I think that, there's not many diseases that really happen by choice. Now, I believe most diseases are self-inflicted. If you're a type 2 diabetic, then, you're drinking classic Coke and you're eating honey buns and pizza every day. That's totally preventable. My wife's a physician, and boy, this is her soapbox. There's so many things that you can do that will prevent any kind of illness that you have in your life. But in terms of being an alcoholic, I think what happens is when you label it a disease. This is, it may be, it may not. Okay, I got some doctor friends that say it is, others say it's bullshit. But to me, the dangerous part of it is it gets labeled as a disease, and then they get to use that as an excuse. They get to use that label. Well, I can't do that. I have this disease. No, I'm unable to do that. I have this disease. Well, you had the disease, and you're obviously cured from it. But what did it take for Daryl Dittmer to get cured from that disease? He had to quit drinking. You had to make the choice to quit drinking. I'm quite sure it was not an easy thing to do. I'm sure it was hell to do. But that's the thing. Most of the people, when I talk about this on social media, most of the people that come after me are either people who are currently alcoholics and they're kind of hopeless, or people that work in the multi-billion-dollar rehab industry, which is the big, these rehab centers have basically boiler rooms to recruit people, to recruit new addicts to come in, because they're billing all this insurance. From what I understand, to even become remotely successful, I think that of getting someone sober, it's like 8 trips. It takes 8 trips.
Ugh. Wow.
And then the other thing about that, and this is my big soapbox, and this is what my soapbox on social media is that we'll just use you as an example. Let's say you had a wife and kids and you were making their life hell, okay? And you quit drinking for a couple of months. Everybody's going to, attaboy, Daryl Dittmer, they're all going to pat you on the back. Way to go. God bless. Keep it up. But what are they saying to your wife and kids who you did all kinds of nasty shit to? Nothing. That's the thing. And I think that's one reason why the stuff that I talk about resonates so well, because I really haven't found, but maybe two or three other people that actually speak out for the victims of these people. Nobody talks to them and or speaks for them. And I think, again, I think the whole disease model is a big reason why.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. And when I was younger and I was getting in and they started talking about disease and I'm going to 12-step meetings and I'm doing all my stuff and I'm trying and I was like, okay, because I didn't know any better. But then as I kept going, I'm like, but wait a minute. If I get my head out of my ass, change my life, and become a person who doesn't give a shit about changing how I feel ever because I feel so freaking good, why would I ever go back to drinking or drugs? I wouldn't. And that's right. Like, that's my life today. Like, my wife said to me, I don't know, a day or two ago, or maybe a week ago, she's like, what do you think would happen if? And I'm like, I just don't give a shit, and she knows how obviously committed I am. And, I haven't had a thought of wanting a drink or a drug in at least 35 years. I just don't care because I built my life. And that's what I try to impress upon people, that when you're getting clean or you're getting sober or whatever, you got to build your freaking life. You can set down the alcohol, but if you're still an asshole and you're still treating people, poorly, and treating yourself poorly, you're in trouble. You're exposed. And so in next conversation, Jeff, we're going to talk about all the people that get paid for you being sick, right? Like, all the people that get paid.
Oh my God.
For you to be sick. Like, they want you to be sick. And we'll talk about that next time, because I can be on the soapbox.
That is a whole industrial complex.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it, I would say most of it is paid for and funded by the old cigarette companies and, of course, pharmaceuticals. Pfizer's been in business for over 150 years and they haven't cured one fucking disease. Not one.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, well, don't get me started on, every time I flip on the TV, all I see is freaking commercials for new pharmaceutical shit, where the side effects
just don't turn it on. Don't turn it on.
I know.
I hardly ever do.
Yeah.
I'll watch. I'll get hooked on an episode, on a series like Landman or Tulsa King or something like that, and I'll watch that. Outside of that, I never turn it on. Never.
That's exactly what we do. We'll watch our shows, and other than that, like, I'm just throwing up from all the bullshit you see on TVs. But anyway, it's been wonderful, man. So how do we find you, Jeff? Where do we find you out there? And we'll put all this in the show notes as well.
My Instagram is at the real Jeff Wright, WRIGHT, at the real Jeff Wright. And if anyone is interested in the ebook that I did, it's really geared towards women, but it's if you flip the pronouns, it's the same thing for guys. It's flinchnomore.com. Very simple. Go on there. It's only $17, and there is something in there that would help anybody and everybody. Doesn't matter if you're with an abusive alcoholic or not, because a lot of it talks about building relationships and maintaining good relationships. And it's actually, for $17, it's very comprehensive. It took me a long time to put it together.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you. And the work that you're doing around that is just, it's wonderful. And thank you for doing that work. Like,
hey, thank you, man. It was a blast talking to you.
Yeah, it was. It was a riot. We'll catch up again soon, but thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.